Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Logan, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Minisforum NAB9 Plus, which is a pretty cool little mini PC rocking a modern 14-core Intel processor, DDR4 memory, NVMe storage, and a pretty impressive set of I/O for such a compact little box. So in this video, I'm going to be trying to go over what kind of performance you can expect from a mini PC like this, what kind of value it provides over other solutions, and whether or not it might be the right option to use as an everyday desktop PC, or maybe as a cheap and fast compute node for your home lab. And taking a look at the NAB9 itself, I have to admit we have a really nice little setup here. Minisforum has designed a pretty solid plastic housing that's wrapped in a high-quality anodized aluminum to contain all of our components. And I think my favorite part about the build of this PC is the top cover, which actually just springs open by pushing on these two front corners of the top panel, and then you can lift it off. And in here you can see a few of our important components, like the NVMe SSD, which is actually equipped with its own tiny little cooling fan, along with our Wi-Fi card and two DDR4 SODIMM slots, which are currently running two 16GB sticks of DDR4 memory. Although I can't say I'm familiar with the manufacturer here, so that's something to keep in mind when looking into these kinds of systems. Most first parties have stopped manufacturing DDR4 memory altogether, so you're usually going to be stuck with third-party vendors. On the bottom of the panel here, we also have a nice little hidden 2.5-inch hard drive bay that you can use with the included SATA cable to add even more storage, which could be nice if you want to run dual SSDs, since we only have a single 2280 M.2 slot on the motherboard. And around the back, we're equipped with two USB 2.0 ports, two 2.5GB Ethernet links, HDMI and DisplayPort for your monitors, and finally a couple of really unique additions, a USB 4 Type-C port and an OCuLink connection. And what's cool about both of these is that they actually offer full-on PCIe links that you can use to add external devices. And honestly, my favorite feature of the NAB9 Plus here is that OCuLink connector. Basically, all it does is take some of the PCIe lanes coming out of our CPU and shoves them into an external connector that you can use to add expansion devices to the PC just as if they were plugged into a real PCIe slot. And that goes for things like storage devices, graphics cards, and anything else that you can find an OCuLink adapter for, which shouldn't be any kind of a problem because OCuLink is an open standard and OCuLink compatible adapters and cables are extremely cheap off of places like Amazon and AliExpress. Just keep in mind that this is not a hot swappable interface, and you should always be pretty careful to make sure you turn the PC off completely before adding or removing any OCuLink devices, because you wouldn't just rip a graphics card out of a computer while it's running. But knowing that, you now have a really affordable way to add dedicated graphics or any other device to this mini PC, which can be done using accessories like the Minisforum DEG1 external GPU dock. I also appreciate the power adapter that Minisforum included with this PC. Since it's really compact, I don't feel like it's compromising on the mini part of this mini PC, unlike some other products where the power adapter is actually bigger than the computer itself, which really kind of negates some of the space savings. And it never seemed to run very hot, even at full load, which was very nice to see. And in here we have a Core i9-12900K, which is a pretty capable mobile processor from early 2022, and it features 6 performance cores with hyper-threading, along with 8 extra efficiency cores to offload lighter workloads in multi-threaded applications or to handle background tasks while those main cores work away at any heavy tasks you might want to throw at them. These efficiency cores are essentially the same cores used in low-power efficient CPUs like the Intel N100, so you can imagine that you're not actually spending a lot of extra power to get a lot of extra multi-threading capability. Now, being a mobile processor, you're not going to see the kind of performance that you might expect to see in a full desktop PC, but it's still a very respectable processor, keeping up with the likes of the last generation Ryzen 7 5700X in synthetic benchmark aggregates like Passmark. And plugging this mini PC into power will get booted into the pre-installed Windows 11 OS. And I have to give a clear disclaimer here that I don't know anything about this copy of Windows. It seems to be activated from the factory, but there aren't any authentic Windows stickers on this PC, so definitely take care when deciding whether or not you want to use this OS. That said, I would happily reinstall Windows no matter who I buy my PC from, and that's a pretty easy job through the use of the Windows Media Creation tool. So you can put a clean install of Windows 11 on here, or even try something like Fedora Linux, which is a personal favorite of mine, and all of the features of this mini PC seem to work perfectly fine on Linux in my testing. I was also impressed when I went into the UEFI setup menu and found a very modern looking interface. They definitely didn't have to go the extra mile here, but it looks like they did, which I really appreciate. This has all of your usual settings. I need to get in here to disable the TPM and then disable secure boot so I could boot a Linux USB, which was really easy. Throughout my testing, I noticed that the PC seemed to stay relatively quiet, even being placed on my desk directly next to my monitor, and I think that this is thanks in part to the very generous cooling vents provided around the fan. And during the course of our benchmarking test, which was performed in a Fedora Linux live USB environment running Passmark in the command line, we ended up seeing a maximum core temperature of 93 degrees Celsius, and during this test, the fan only really spun up to an audible level around the 90-degree mark, where the PC would make a noticeable whine, but it wasn't all that distracting, and I think performance is definitely helped by the design that offers direct, unobstructed ventilation from both the back and the side of the mini PC. And with that benchmark, we were left with a Passmark CPU score of 28,147, which is surprisingly about 10% higher than the average Passmark score recorded for this CPU. And our single core score of 3,847 was also very surprising, given that this is an older 12th generation Intel chip. And as far as home server use, I wanted to point out a couple of important considerations. I really like these Intel CPUs since they offer everything you need, like Intel QuickSync Video for hardware video transcoding, so you can use them for things like Jellyfin without much software overhead. But since we have that 12th gen CPU, and it's using Intel's hybrid core architecture with separate performance and efficiency cores, if you want to run any virtual machines or containers on this hardware, you need to make sure that you update your operating system to ensure that you're using a new enough CPU scheduler to properly handle these different cores, or else you could run into performance issues. Since this ran Linux just fine, I think it could be a really good addition to a home lab setup where you might want more processing power without investing in a massive server. Those dual 2.5 gigabit links are going to be significantly more future-proof than the cheap 1 gigabit links found on a lot of similar devices, even in 2025. You can buy the configuration we reviewed today on Amazon right now for about $450 US. And the big question here is whether or not this actually deserves your hard-earned cash. And I think, like all things, it's a little too nuanced to give a clear conclusion, but if you need a small and decently performing mini PC to fit within very tight space constraints and you don't feel like building something yourself, I think the NAB9 here is a great option. It gives you a lot of the flexibility of a much larger desktop thanks to the inclusion of that OCuLink interface, but that older generation CPU can be a little bit of a limitation, especially considering last gen parts like the Ryzen 7600X can be found for as little as $170 right now, and those will have considerably better single and multi-threaded performance, with the caveat that you're now building a much larger desktop computer than you otherwise would have been getting with this. Overall, I'm really happy with the Minisforum NAB9 Plus. It offers nice quality and enough I/O that you can expand it without missing out on some of the benefits of a more expensive desktop when you need it. So if you're interested in checking out the Minisforum NAB9 Plus or any of their other similar offerings, I'll leave a link to Minisforum's website and Amazon down in the description below so you can go ahead and check those out. If you thought this video was helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our future content. And as always, have an awesome day.